Hey, everybody, this is Father Edward Looney, and you are tuning into This Past Week, this new series that I have been releasing on my podcast every Saturday or on the weekend, simply looking back at the last week, sharing different thoughts, reflections that I've had, sometimes things that can't make it into a social media post or just musings that I've had. Of course, why not have a thought that goes unshared? So that's why we have this past week. Grateful you tune in. I think the show's been received well. I hope that it continues to grow over the next several weeks and months ahead if it continues. I do enjoy doing this on a Saturday morning, recording just a few thoughts, typically about 20 minutes in length, just enough, hopefully. Not a lot of podcasts release weekend content, so maybe I'm always looking for something to listen to as I'm getting ready for the day. So maybe I fill that void for people on the weekend. But thanks for being a listener. Thanks for subscribing and following. Hey everybody, it's Father Edward. My YouTube channel continues to experience good growth, healthy number of views this past week on my video about the Last Supper, and grateful for those who have turned to me to see what my thoughts were, and just kind of shows that algorithms like my video content for movie reviews, I guess, but just that I hope I can be one of those trusted sources in the commentary on film and such, and just something like this past week or something like The Last Supper really shows that, I think. So, let's just get to it, shall we? So, what we do, if you're a new listener, so we simply look at what I saw, something I saw scrolling through social media that I want to comment on. I have some what we call evergreen topics that I keep in my phone just in case I didn't see anything or didn't make the connection. But I do have one today, what I saw, what I read. Sometimes it's a book. Today I'm going to talk about a little article I read in a magazine that I received. So I have a few magazines on my desk that I want to read an article or two. So I think over the next few weeks, we'll probably be commenting on some of those articles, what I'm writing right now, and then what I watched. So let's start talking. Let's start reflecting. What did I see this past week? You might know this, and I don't think I'm saying anything that people aren't aware of, but the church, like many entities in the world, there are little factions or groups or, you know, like if you envision life as a sandbox, sometimes they don't like playing in the sandbox with each other. So you have some cardinals who are conservative, some who are more progressive, and, these different ideologies. You have some people that are Latin Mass devotees, and you have adherents, strongly to the spirit of Vatican II, for example. So we have a wide range, wide perspective, and hopefully you just find yourself somewhere in the middle, not at any one of the extremes. Now, there are some U.S. cardinals, and some of them have a reputation, I would say, of maybe being a bit more progressive. And so the right doesn't like the left. And this past week, a cardinal was installed in Washington, D.C., Cardinal Robert McElroy. If you had to put him in a little box, I'd probably say left leaning, right? I'm not trying to categorize, I'm just making observation. But hopefully, the point here just comes home. So, Cardinal McElroy is installed as the next Archbishop, next Cardinal of Washington, D.C. And I saw this picture floating around. Now, I had seen different, I actually didn't know this was happening this past week. That's how kind of clueless I was about it all. But saw the social media, saw the postings about his reception and whatnot, the mass, etc. And the pictures I saw looked like a full basilica, looked like a good crowd of people. So I kind of was thinking, oh, this is great. You know, the church can come together. They support, they're behind individuals, etc. Right? But then I saw this post that was floating around on Twitter, and then I saw it over on Facebook that one commentator was sharing it, and supposedly it's a picture taken from the back of the basilica, looking forward, and it's trying to demonstrate that this cardinal, that he's not well liked, and that the church in the back is all empty, and that they're trying to portray that the images of of the installation mass, that they're kind of taken from a vantage point to say there's a lot of people there. Now, I don't know if that picture taken at the back of the church was true. I don't think it was, just based on different images and the testimony of people that were there, priests of the Archdiocese of Washington, D.C. and such. So I guess what I saw was just everything you see on social media, you can't always trust it. I think a lot of people have taken that perspective with the news, that certain news outlets you can't always trust, and it could go either way. But that a lot of times there are agendas that people are trying to accomplish. And sometimes you hate to say it, but people simply can't be trusted to, to think that someone might post that picture and it's not true and it's malicious. Like, why? Why does that happen? How do you think posting a falsified picture is a good idea, knowing the firestorm it'll set off in the online world? So I guess my question is read what you see online, read the postings, but do so with a critical eye. Be open to reading a different perspective about what this person is presenting. I read the comments. People were saying, like, this picture must have been taken in the beginning. It must have been, like, is this even a picture from today? There isn't a timestamp. So there are a lot of different questions, issues about it. But the point that they're trying to prove, this back of the church is all empty. It's not a full crowd. Nobody wants to come to this. No one's happy about this. That's what they're trying to say. So I think, we got to approach different things. The installation of a new cardinal with an open mind, for example, and just from what I read, from what he said, I was impressed. I was impressed by what he said. So I think we just got to keep an open mind, critical mind as well. Is this true? Maybe we have to do a little background to look at things that we read, because think about it. How many people saw this picture now? They've gone to their coffee groups, they've gone to all these other things, and they've spouted what they read, and maybe what they read wasn't even true. So it's kind of the spreading of misinformation. My life as a pastor, I know the spreading of misinformation. That one person says this about one thing that's happening and, not true at all. Needs retraction, needs correction. So that's what I saw. Just my caution. Look at things on social media, but do some critical thinking yourself. What I read this week, I support, and I've been a pilgrim to. I had a video that went up online about my visit to the shrine of the Miraculous Medal in Perryville, Missouri. It was a beautiful place, and I was there on a beautiful, well, it was early September, so probably not yet autumn day. Late summer day, I was there, and I just thought it was all about the grotto that they had and the rosary walk that they had, and so I did that, and I was strapped for time, and I walked into the church, and I said, "My Lord and my God," He's there in the Blessed Sacrament. I said, "I wish I would have spent more time in this church. Stunningly beautiful." I support the Association of the Miraculous Medal, and as a result, I get their quarterly, I bet, newsletter. Their quarterly newsletter, Spring Bulletin. And I was just reading one of the articles in here. It was from the CEO of the Miraculous Medal Shrine, and the article I was reading was called Walking Through the Busy Airport of Life. And, the author, Don Fulford, who is the CEO, makes this point about, just walking in an airport, watching the different people. And, as you people watch, you wonder, different things about them. And he makes the connection then just about the journey, leads me to the ultimate destination of spending eternity in peace and joy with God. So, he makes the analogy of life as a busy airport, just you're going, there's lots of people around you. He calls it, and as I walk through the busy airport of life, I'm reminded that every face, every story, every scar, every tattoo, every hair color, and every smile is a testament to the resilience, uniqueness, and beauty of the human spirit. We are a gift from God and a story of faith that is something truly special. This year I'm spending a little more time in airports than I have in the years past. Just this year alone already, I've been to Birmingham, I've been to EWTN and Irondale, and I flew out to Detroit to film for a documentary. In early April, I'm flying to California to preach a Lenten mission. In May, I'm flying to North Carolina, and you might hear my busy travel schedule, and you might say, "Father's never at his parish." No, like North Carolina, I tell the people I have to do whatever I'm doing on Monday. That's my day off, and I need to be back by Tuesday morning. So Tuesday mid-morning. And so that's what I've booked. I've booked a Sunday night flight, gets me to North Carolina at, I don't know, 11 p.m. I'll do my filming in North Carolina for this YouTube channel. It's also associated with a publisher, so they want to pitch a few projects to me, from my understanding. So, so we'll do that. I'll do that on Monday, and then I'll fly back early Tuesday morning, and I'll be home by like 10 o'clock. So I try not to let some of these things detract from my parish life, work, and ministry. So in May, too, I'm out in Baltimore for the annual meeting of the Marian Scholars in the United States, the Mariological Society of America. So we got that coming up. In September, I'm heading to Rome. I don't know what else. Those are the planned travels. Things pop up, and I discern whether or not I want to do this or that. Sometimes I do say no to invitations, but suffice to say, I spend a lot of time in different airports. The Green Bay Airport, connecting in Detroit or Atlanta or Minneapolis. And what he says, the people watching, what he says, I was captivated by the variety, each person uniquely traveling their own path of life. I've always had this thought, and I've never really shared it online. So that's why I thought I would take the opportunity, and when I read, just say I read this guy's little article in the Spring Bulletin, and this is my thought about airports. And as I'm sitting at the gate, I'll tell my story first, and then I'll give another little example I saw online. So as I sit at the gate, as I'm waiting, as I'm watching, and for me, being in going to Green Bay or flying out of Green Bay, I always look around. I'm like, do I know people? Yeah, one time, one of my parishioners, their wife was on my flight, and I see people from my old parishes and whatnot. So I always look, do I know someone? Do they recognize me? Whatever. So something I do at the gate. But I'm much like this gentleman who wrote this article here. I am a people watcher. I look and watch and think where are these people going or, what brings them where they're going or whatever. But the other thought I've had as I've sat there in the airport is that it's like a microcosm of heaven. Because if you think about it, all these people, like you're sitting in Atlanta, it's one of the busiest airports in the United States, in the world. You look around and so many different people, and I just am overwhelmed at times thinking, all these people, the hope is they'll be in heaven one day. We'll spend all eternity together. I don't know them. I don't know their story. I don't know anything about them. But I have hope and faith that we'll probably be together in heaven. And so I just see, the airport as that. And, two other little stories. I forget which saint. Bishop Barron writes about this in his book, Catholicism. And he tells it in the DVD as well in the series. But essentially, that when somebody was going to convert to the Catholic faith, they were Anglican, they're from England. Their parents or their family said, if you convert to Catholicism, you'll be worshiping with the help. And, it's just, I bring that up only because, like, heaven is all of us, rich or poor, whatever. In my book, Praying with the Church Through Lent, I tell the story about the man who had the bag that didn't zip and he wanted to check it. And the airport attendant was very annoyed that he wanted to check a bag that didn't zip. And, you know, he is going to be in heaven hopefully one day. Like, after, that he'll turn to the Lord and be forgiven of whatever in his life and that he'll be in heaven one day. There's one other image that I've seen floating around online that, captures just heaven and the idea of heaven. And it's, when a baseball player hits a home run and they're running around third base and the whole team is there at home base. A photographer says he loves taking that picture because it reminds him of heaven and the joyful entry of people into heaven. So I think there's something about this analogy, and thanks to Don Fulford for really talking about airplanes and walking through the busy airport of life. And that allowed me to just remember that thought I had one day as I was walking around the airport. This is a microcosm of heaven. What did I write? I'm working on a movie article, so it's a list. I don't want to like tell you what I'm working on because if I do so, then someone else could do that. I was asked to write it for a publication, so again, kind of nice. Like because of the work I've done in film and promoting film, I get these invitations to comment, to write, and such. That is, you know, well, I say the word a lot, so I'm conscious of that. Uh, I wrote that book, Places of Grace. If I had I'm looking at it, it's right over there. I'd hold it up right now if it was on this table, but it's not. But I wrote the book, Places of Grace, and I spoke about the graces of different places I've visited. Pilgrimage, it's a travel memoir. If I was going to write another little, I don't know if it'd end up getting picked up by a main publisher, but I'd probably write a book about movies. And I have the book in mind, I have the title, and um, one of these days I just gotta put fingers to keyboard I envision that as one of those little things that you just work on. Today I'm recording this. It's Saturday morning. I'm going to go to a coffee shop after this. I'm going to write for 2 hours. It's just one of those things that I think, when you go to a coffee shop, that you just write it and eventually it'll be a full book, a gradual writing. That's my goal. But I want to write a book about movies. And let me know if you're still watching this. Let me know if that's something you'd be interested in. Be like a tour de force of film with me. Films that have been impactful on me. Kind of, again, like a movie memoir, if you will. So that's what I'm writing. Also, still writing those daily Stations of the Cross on the internet. Speaking of the Stations of the Cross, I wrote Praying the Stations with St. Joseph back during the year of St. Joseph. And I just saw that a diocese in West Virginia put out a graphic of my stations. And they didn't ask, and that's okay. To me, it doesn't matter. They give me credit, so that's all I always ask for. So just to let people know who wrote it, they might be interested in something else they've written then, consequently. So, but I'm so grateful, actually, grateful that these are still floating around, that people are still praying them, listening to them. I did a YouTube video where I prayed the stations with them. Very humbled, honored, all at the same time. The lasting effect of the writing you do. And that's something too. I wrote that book, A Lenten Journey, again, back in 2019 I wrote it, published in 2020. The number of sales it had this year, it was in the top 1,000 of all Amazon books. That's really good if you don't know. I can look and see some of the sales numbers. But the fact that 5 years, 6 years, this is the sixth Lent with the book, but 6 years later, people are still reading and rereading. I get so many messages of people rereading The Lenten Journey with Mother Mary. Again, very honored that some of these things stand the test of time. People are still revisiting them. So that's what I'm writing. I have a few other ideas about writing, but haven't put fingers, as I say, to keyboard. Then finally, what did I watch? I mentioned already the movie The Last Supper, and I did a little 6-minute take on it. I thought it was a very powerful movie. I think anytime you come into this contact with the story of Jesus, it's going to be impactful, whether it's good or not. Not saying that Last Supper isn't good. It's good. I think everybody's, and this is what I say in the review, everybody's perception of Jesus is now Jonathan Rumi. And so if you put this Jesus against Jonathan Rumi, you'll be disappointed. But if you just look at him as one portraying the Lord and watch the story of the Last Supper, and I thought it was powerful. It gave me a lot of things to think about. I appreciated a few things. And I commented specifically on Peter's denial of Jesus, and I saw on YouTube someone left a comment about that. So that resonated with someone else. I think you'll walk away from the movie with something that stays with you. Now, there is one person left a comment over on Facebook. I saw they left a comment over on Instagram because a page that I follow and they follow me, they tagged me and said, I thought Father Edward Looney had a good review of it. And basically saying, like, just because you think some things are not right, maybe doesn't mean they aren't right. It could be actually the way it happened. Like, I think we approach these stories with a very limited framework, I guess. What I mean is that I think that during the public ministry of Jesus, this is confirmed by Anne Catherine Emmerich, so that she formed my opinion on this. But I believe that in the public ministry of Jesus, there were probably multiplications of loaves. That there were many blind people that were healed. That Jesus kept telling the same parables and the different areas that he taught, that there was repetition in the ministry of Jesus. So I think that as the movie portrays like certain teachings, people might say it didn't happen there, but who's to say it didn't? Couldn't it have been repeated? So I watched The Last Supper. I did do that on a pre-screener, so I watched that a few weeks ago, actually. There's actually conversation about a larger collaborative role with the project, and it didn't materialize, but we were in conversations for a few days. A film crew was going to fly out to my parish, maybe. So, and we were going to do some content with it, but it didn't end up happening. Honored to have been considered. They chose to go a different route. I don't think they did. Anyways, it doesn't matter. So there's that. Last Supper. I did a podcast interview coming out maybe in 2 or 3 weeks. It was called Searching for the Elephant. All right, okay movie. I watched that. Yeah, it's an indie film, so take it for what that means. But I interviewed the people behind it and kind of the making of a movie. That was my premise there. Walking through each step of making a movie, using their movie as a example. So I watched that. There were a few little scenes, that you're like, oh, this is like a light bulb moment, for the characters. I also sometimes, and maybe I'm just weird, sometimes I just think like, oh, I look at my Thursday night and I'm like, oh, I don't have anything going on tonight. And I know next Thursday I have commitments and I know what my life looks like for the next few weeks. I'm like, I'd really like to go to the movies tonight, go to the theater. So I look at the listings and nothing really that impressive. There is one movie I want to see, but it's not in the Green Bay area and it just shows up in the app and something about these people breaking out of a Nazi concentration camp to tell the world about what the Nazis are doing, and thought that was that would be good. I think we're always kind of just like we have so many Jesus movies. There are a lot of movies about the Holocaust, about Nazis, and I think we make those so that we never forget. Um, so I went to the theaters on Thursday. Went and saw Black Bag. I had like three options that were on the table: Black Bag, Novocaine, or Looney Tunes. And the only reason I was going to go see Looney Tunes was because my last name is Looney. But I chose Black Bag. Seemed like maybe would be of interest, spy thriller movie. It was more like a whodunit movie as well. A thriller, you could say, too. I thought the story was rather slow. I wish it was a little faster. Not that it would have been shorter, but a more fast paced movie. I thought it was a slow paced movie. But in terms of transitioning and all that. But a few things I didn't care for, there, of course, like unnecessary sexual references, definitely not a fan of that. Uh, Probably a few curse words too. Nothing that really stood out. Like, I'm happy I went to see Black Bag. Would have been good on would have been good on the big screen. Kind of went because it was produced by Focus Theaters and or In Focus or I forget. Now don't at me at this, but they did Conclave and I just thought Conclave in general theatrically was a good movie, like well done, captivating, and so that's what drew me to Black Bag as well. Was just the company that made it that I'm like, oh, they make good quality stuff. So I think you could probably wait. If you like a spy movie, you can wait. You don't need to go to well, you could go to the theater if you want, but it's up to you. If you're looking for something to do like I was, get out of the house, change of scenery. Well, why not? I'll say this too. Last night, after the Stations of the Cross, just kind of wanted to like sit in the recliner, not work with my mind or anything like that. Just was kind of on overload for the day. And I had listened to a podcast about film and television, and they were talking about some of the shows nominated for Emmys. And there was a show on Max, and I don't really make use of my Max subscription all that much, like so much so that maybe I should like get rid of it. But I'm like, oh, well, they mentioned a show. It was a medical drama, medical uh, procedural. And I thought, oh, I maybe, and they said it was well done and that you just couldn't stop watching it. They were right. Like the way that they end each episode, you're like, I just need to know what happens. Unfortunately, the next episode's there, and so you watch it. So, a few curse words here and there in the movie. You know, or not movie, the show, in the show. For a medical show, it was really enlightening. The last episode I watched though had a topic of that we won't talk about here, but just always dissatisfied when certain things creep in. So it was the pro-life, pro-choice question. That's what I'll say there. So disappointed in that episode, but yeah, it was captivating if you have Max. So that's that. If you made it to the end of the show, congratulations. I'm going to say one more thing, and these are things that I take feedback for, so feel free to email, comment, send a message. My thought here is as we talk about film, like I talked about film in a lot of different regards. And I went to the library yesterday because I needed to figure out what my PIN code was so I could request something from a different library and whatnot. So they helped me with that. I was able to put in the request. What I was requesting was a movie that a parishioner recommended to me called The Perfect Stranger. And it should be coming. The movie should come next week, I'm sure. And I read the premise of it. Looks interesting. Probably, we'll see how it is. It's an old movie, like made in the 90s or early 2000s. But I thought maybe this would be an interesting, and maybe this is just like a TikTok reel or Instagram reel, but I just thought maybe revisiting film and not just discovering something on Netflix like you could do, but I mean revisiting film, like go to the library, check out a DVD, watch it, and then kind of document the whole process of going to the library and checking it out, and then doing a few thoughts about a show, a movie that I haven't seen before, but that I was found at the library. Just a way to really make aware of people that libraries have movies. And I actually went to the library when I was doing my bus trip last year. We did a bus trip to Detroit to Solanas Casey. And on the bus trip, I checked out movies from the theater. Or not this, from the theater. I checked out movies from the library and showed them. So I had the thought then, but I have the thought now too. So I don't know if that'd be interesting content. To me, that's interesting content. Also would be like, what am I going to watch tonight? Well, have that like weekly or bi-weekly agenda item. I have another movie a friend of mine gave me, actually. It's underneath my TV. I don't know the name of it, but my intention is to do a review of that here soon in honor and respectful of them and that gift that they gave me. So that's this past week. We've gone a bit longer than usual. I thank you for your time, for your attention. Thanks for tuning in. If you ever have any ideas or comments, I'd be happy to hear from you. Please follow me on social media, rate and review wherever you listen. Until next time, God bless you.